to you here in Chula Vista in the room and to you online. I'm honored to be with you on week 2 of Hero Maker. Last week when we kicked off the series, one of the big ideas we looked at is that we all have various degrees of influence and power. It may be organizational, it may be influential, it may be social, it may be civil, it may be financial. The list of ways we can have power and influence goes on and on. One of the realities about power is that power isn't consistent. It may be different in the different areas of our life, different season of our life, and power has this way of even ebbing and flowing perhaps through the day. When I'm talking to my 15-year-old son, I can visibly see the power leave, right? There's a look he has in his eyes that let me know, oh, you're not listening to me anymore. My power is gone. My 4-year-old is very different. He has a way of boldly communicating to me that the power dynamics, they have shifted. Yesterday we were grabbing burritos and I quickly let him know, hey, can you make sure you don't do blank? And I asked him to do this thing in advance. And he stops and he looks at me and he says, you know what? You got it, because you're lucky. I don't want to do that. It was terrible. But the part of him that knew, if I say no, which I can, if I still do it, which I can, you then have to respond. He understands that power dynamics, they ebb and flow. So the big idea we're looking at here is that we all have some level of power and influence in our life. And that we get to choose and to evaluate, the big question we're looking at is, how will I use my power? What am I going to do with the power and the influence that I do have? So power and influence, what we know is that it's when it's misused, underutilized, when it's not appropriately recognized and empowered, it has a capacity to enable, create problems. On the flip side, power that is harnessed for good, we know, has a capacity to birth and rebirth more and more goodness. This is true in our personal relationships, and this is also true on a global level, and it is true with everything in between. And with the rare exceptions, as human beings, this ability to harness power, to intentionally say, what am I going to do with my power, is something, a part of us that reflects the image of God. And to be hero makers is to make that deliberate, intentional choice that says, I'm going to harness my power for the sake of helping others, for the sake of doing good for others. So as we explore this topic of influence today, we'll be looking at this idea that when it comes to power, we all get to choose. Go ahead and grab that outline. Here's our first fill-in. It says, I will protect my power to elevate myself or share my power to elevate others. So will I protect my power or will I share my power? Will I look out for number one or will I decide to do the work of being a hero maker for other people? And while I'd like to believe most of us know the right answer, right? Maybe some don't, but most of us are like, hero maker, yeah. I want us to acknowledge, and I want there to be space, honest space here for us to say that even though we might know the right answer, that there's a complication sometimes here, that sometimes it is easier said than done to leverage our power for the sake of helping other people. Maybe it's in certain areas of our life, seasons of our life, or even in certain relationships where this gets more difficult. And on a very human level, that makes a ton of sense to me. We live in a culture that is saturated with messages of fear and insecurity and scarcity. Watch the news, right? Or consider the fact that there's billions of dollars spent every year to make us feel less worthy about ourselves so that we in turn go and spend more money. Or look at the numbers surrounding anxiety. As Americans, we are anxious people. This tells us something about the culture we live in. And here's what we know, that when we don't feel good about ourselves, when we are worried about ourselves, we are not enough, we don't matter, when we're drowning, when we're in survival mode, it's human for us to have a more difficult time to open our hands and say, how can I use the power that I do have to elevate other people? I don't think that makes us bad people. I think that's just what it means to be human. So in light of this normal resistance, this very human resistance we may feel, I want us to acknowledge that I don't believe that being people who generously give our power away is simply the right thing to do. I believe that the Bible argues that it's actually for our own good as well. Even before Jesus came on the scene, here's what we know the Old Testament said about generosity. Let's go ahead and read this one out loud together, okay? It's on the screen and on your outline. Ready, go. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. So to be clear, the book of Proverbs is not a book of promises. What the book of Proverbs is, it's a book intended to kind of wake us up to realize, hey, there's choices and your choices result in things. And what this book tells us is that living generously leaves us positioned in this enriched position. It leaves us positioned well. So in the scheme of this series, we'd say that being a hero maker, being generous with our power, that at the end of the day, it creates a win-win situation. So this isn't simply about us being weak and these passive, submissive doormats. That being a hero maker is about making this empowered choice that says, I'm going to deliberately, intentionally use my power to leverage other people. Or this is a point on the outline. A hero maker finds ways to help and strengthen and motivate others. To help, to strengthen and motivate others. Again, this is a conversation about intentionality, intentionally encouraging others, intentionally building other people up. Actively looking for ways to encourage and build up others is a theme we see throughout the New Testament. One of those verses is found in the book of Hebrews, and here's what it says. And let us consider how, it doesn't say if, it says how, we may spur or provoke, some translations say, one another towards love and good deeds. And if you're thinking, listen, I would give encouragement, I just don't know anybody who needs it. My reminder for you would be to remember that we live in a culture that at a very young age, we learn do not appear weak. That we've learned in our own various ways, our defense mechanisms, that anything that makes us feel weak or vulnerable, that we hide it, we shove it down. On a very personal level, I know in my own life that it takes conscious, deliberate work for me to allow even the most trusted people in my life to see the ways that I feel vulnerable. And that I even have to work consciously to acknowledge to myself in the privacy of my own life to say, oh, that thing makes me feel weak. In the 66 different books that make up our entire Bible, what we hear and we read repeatedly is that some of these heroes and these giants of faith, people that paved the way, the forerunners of the faith that we stand on today, that they were also people in need of encouragement. We have people like Moses, the legendary leader of the Jewish people, who said this, but this load is far too heavy. If this is how you intend to treat me, just go ahead and kill me. We have Elijah, a godly man and prophet, say, I've had enough, Lord. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. We have King David, the most loved and famous king of the Jewish people, say this, for my life is full of troubles. I am as good as dead. And the list goes on and on and on. And one of the things the Bible tells us indirectly here is that even the greats, even the heroes, even those people who have paved the way, the people that we are standing on top of, that allowed us to be where we are, the ones we look up to, that even they are in need of encouragement. And for some of us, I respect and understand this may feel and sound so needy. I know those people in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, like grow up a little, okay? And the truth is there are probably some people in our lives that they need to do the hard work of being okay without constant external affirmation. That they have some healing that needs to get done so that they're not walking around life expecting trophies for showing up, okay? When you go to work, your trophy is your paycheck. Do your job, right? There's a reality to this. But that's not what we're talking about. Even when we read research, what research even tells us is that encouragement is vital for healthy relationships. And that in order for us to grow, it is a healthy in human development to need encouragement. This is true in every segment of our life. No one is immune, and no one ever gets to this place of greatness where they don't need it. In my own life, one of the things I have to consciously, actively work on is to allow people's encouragement, whether it comes in the form of words or like practical help. I have to consciously choose to say yes to it. Because I have this incredible ability to be like a ninja and to dodge practical and loving encouragement. So someone may say, hey, way to go, and I like spit out very quickly, no problem, no big deal, instead of doing the awkward work of taking that and saying, thank you. Or in my own life, I had this pivotal moment about 2 years ago when I had to cancel on a friend because I was homesick with the stomach bug. And she offered to bring me homemade chicken noodle soup. And this just isn't any friend who like makes soup. This is like one of those friends that when they say, I'm going to make you something, you're like, it's on, I'll see you there. You wear your stretchy pants, when you get ready for this thing. She offered the soup. I felt though like, dude, I'm fine. I found some chicken noodle soup in the back of my pantry from 2008. It's okay, I'll survive. But to say, dude, allow this person to come over and see you look like death and say yes to the good chicken noodle soup. It took conscious, deliberate work on my end. So even though this all may feel needy, even though we may have some resistance, even though it may be hard to leverage our power for the sake of helping other people, I have no doubt that God intended to use one another as means of grace in each of our lives. That God desires for us to come together and to encourage and to build up, that we need each other. And that wasn't just a convenient thing, but that is by design. That we are positioned to need one another, to need the support of others. So with that being said, the question is, so how do we grow in our capacity to encourage others? We're gonna be looking at 3 deliberate ways that we can be more considerate of ways we can encourage others. And my caveat and my disclaimer throughout the whole thing is to remember, this is gonna look different in each and every one of our lives. Based on your strengths, your weaknesses, your personalities, your job, your schedule, you name it, that there's gonna be room. The point is to look at these 3 ways and to kind of metabolize them to consider, in my own life, what does this look like? So here's our first fill-in under ways to encourage others. It says, speak life-giving words. We talked a little bit about this last week. There are a million ways to speak life-giving words. Write a letter, put it on Facebook, take someone to dinner and say, I have something to share with you. You can do so many things, okay? Here at Eastlake, what we do when we have our staff meetings, we start our staff meetings by doing staff awards, where we're able to nominate one another and to cheer each other on for something that we saw this other person do and accomplish. End of quarter reviews, you name it. There's ways that we can deliberately share life-giving words, okay? You can rent a plane and write it in the sky. You name it. There's no right way, wrong way when it comes to this whole thing. Last week, we specifically talked about the power that we have when it comes to speaking out the gifts and the goodness we see in other people. We call them I see in you conversations. These intentional conversations to call out the goodness of one another. And when we talk about I see in you conversations, in my own life, if I were to question the ways in which my life has been deeply impacted, these cornerstone moments, these moments where things shifted for me, where I made deliberate choices and changes, many of those things come down to the right people at the right time, being intentional through an I see in you conversation. There are choices I have made and choices I'm currently making in my life based on the right people having I see in you conversations with me. There's power in our words. And a quick disclaimer on this, okay? Make sure that you listen to the right people, okay? And make sure right people being like credible, right sources, follow your gut, your intuition. And oftentimes when it comes to our giftings, look for confirmations. Look for confirmations from multiple credible sources. So when your mom says, you sing so well, don't quit your day job. Give it a second. Let's see what happens, okay? So last week, we had, in the midst of it all, again, I want us to make sure we know this can look a million ways in all of our lives. Last week, out on the patio, I had this conversation with this brilliant, talented, strong, incredible young woman. She has these big, audacious goals in her life. And she was telling me that she was communicating how she was feeling regarding some of the things that are happening in her life and how much it meant to her when her growth group, the women in her growth group, rallied around her. And they said, keep on going. At this point in my life, I have come to understand that a very sincere, keep up the good work, can be so life-giving. I like to work hard and I'm driven because of something in me likes to do that. I don't do what I do simply for people notice. That's not my bent. But when the right person in the right way says, keep up the good work, that speaks so much life into my heart, into my soul. Proverbs puts it this way. The words of the godly are like a life-giving fountain. In my own marriage, I have recently had to make the vulnerable request, and even saying this brings up a visceral response of I hate feeling so needy. I had to make this request to my husband. My husband, let me start by saying this, is a champion when it comes to showering with me with I love yous. He says I love you so much. I don't question whether my husband loves me or not. That emoji kissy face on our iPhones, man, my husband has no problem throughout the day being thinking of you, kissy face, right? He's a master. But after 10 years of marriage, I came to this place of realizing I would like to be reminded of why he loves me. I needed a little bit more deliberation, a deliberate intentionality of here's what I love about you. So I had to do the hard, vulnerable, sounding needy work of saying, hey, will you take some of those I love yous and turn them into what you love about me? It was so hard. It's still hard to acknowledge that I'm so needy. But I needed life-giving words in my own marriage in that particular season. Last Friday, I went to a birthday party with a really close friend. It was about 7 of us gathered around. We had just had dinner, and what would have been the most natural time to bring out the cake, bring out the gifts, my friend whose birthday we were celebrating, she pulls out this stack of frames, and on all the frames, there's all of our names with one word that she has chosen that reminds her of us. And then she goes around the table one by one, giving us our frame, communicating the word she chose and why she chose it, and how she sees this word in us, and how she wants to cheer it on and support it and encouragement. It was her birthday. And this woman made the deliberate effort to bring us gifts and then to shower us with life-giving words. I want to be clear. If you come to my birthday party, I'm not giving you any gifts, okay? I'm not. You have your birthday, and I have my birthday. Don't get them crossed, suckers, okay? But this woman who has chosen, I know her story, so I know it's a deliberate choice she has made to be a hero maker, chose to use this time very intentionally to shower her people with words of encouragement. Ephesians 4:29 says this. This one's not on your outline, but it is on the screen. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Not that long ago, I went to Target. I had had a really long day at work. My 4-year-old had had a rough afternoon, but I needed to go to Target and get some stuff done. Seconds prior to running into this person who was a brand new volunteer and is now a friend, I had been like in the backside of Target. My cart was like ready to go. Like I was doing shopping. He was clearly done. And so I was thinking, like, I had put my hair up in a bun and was like, I'm gonna need to carry my kid out of Target because like we're done. Like, we need to get out of here. I run into her, and my only agenda at that point was get out of Target alive with what you need, okay? So I was pretty short with her. I wasn't rude, but I definitely wasn't like, hey, let's communicate and talk. So later that night, I go and I email her. We had already been having an ongoing email conversation. So I email her and I say, hey, about the content we need to talk about, and then, hey, sorry, here's a little bit about what was happening. I get back from her a reply that says, I think you're being too hard on yourself. I actually watched you, and I could tell that you were doing your best. You're doing a good job. Seriously, like crying, writing a work email, not cool, but it's true. I want to be the kind of person who speaks life-giving words to others. I'm trying to intentionally do the work of growing in this. When the words come to me, to intentionally share the words, because I don't want to wait until people's funerals to say nice things about them. Now, at your funeral, I will say nice things about you, assuming you were cool, okay? I'm not gonna lie like I've seen other people do. But I don't wanna wait until I lose people I love to all of a sudden find words to express how much they mean to me. I don't wanna live my life like that. And I'm even trying to do this with strangers, okay? It gets awkward sometimes. My friends know I can do awkward, okay? I can do awkward. So even this week, there was a woman interacting with my son. You could tell she was so gifted with kids. So before we left, I'd let her know. I said, thank you for being so kind, and I want to make sure you know, I clearly can tell you're gifted with kids. I think her boyfriend thought I was hitting on her, but it's fine. No big deal, no harm, no foul, okay? Again, we can do awkward. This whole topic actually makes me think of my friend Serena. Serena is a champion of encouragement. She's so good that I'm now watching her take her 3 little girls and teaching them, deliberately teaching them, sisters, our words can bring life, so let's dish out life. It is a beautiful thing to watch. Encouragement, being deliberate encouragers, is living in this position that understands I get to be a mirror for other people, that I can mirror people's values and worth to them, allowing people to see through my eyes, through our eyes. Go ahead and write this one down. The second way we can encourage others is embody hospitality. One of the unfortunate things that I see in our culture right now is that we associate hospitality simply with opening up our home. Hospitality is so much more than opening up your home. It's about a posture and a disposition towards other people with respect to our different personalities, okay? That says, hey, I welcome you in this shared space. Whether you're a guest, a stranger, a friend, I welcome you in our shared space. It's a way of connecting with other people, of communicating respect, of dignity, of making space for other people. And again, we're talking about being close enough to people that we allow and position ourselves to serve as mirrors, where it's helping people feel their worth and their value through our eyes, our posture, the way that we welcome and receive one another. And this is something we can do no matter where we find ourselves, at the park, at school, where you study, where you party. It doesn't matter. I think we can even do this at terrible places like Walmart and the Costco parking lot, okay? Try not to get killed at the Costco parking lot because that place is vicious, but I think we can embody hospitality everywhere we go. And it's from this up close, shared space, open posture that I believe, I know that we are best positioned to see how is God already working in someone's life, and then we get to come alongside that and to rally and support and to deliberately encourage people in the right direction. It's even from this up close place that I'm actually finally able to see, oh, here are your practical needs. Here is how I can help you. Here's how I can leverage the power and the resources I have to elevate you. This conversation is a conversation about power with, not power over. Power with, not power over. And in order for us to do this well, it's going to require some level of hospitality in our disposition towards one another. The New Testament and church history tell us that hospitality was a mark of the early church. One beautiful story we find that captures this embodiment of hospitality is in the New Testament. And here's a quick backstory. In the New Testament, we run across a guy named Joseph. This guy, Joseph, goes by the nickname of Barnabas. Barnabas means son of encouragement. Barnabas had a ton of influence in the early church. One of the people that he was able to encourage and use his influence with was a new follower of Christ who's named Saul. Saul, prior to coming to know Jesus, was someone who actively, intentionally persecuted Christ's followers, okay? So here's where our verse picks up. When Saul arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to meet with the believers, but they were all afraid of him. They did not believe he had truly become a believer. Then Barnabas brought him to the apostles and told him how Saul had seen the Lord on the way to Damascus and how the Lord had spoken to Saul. He also told them that Saul had preached boldly in the name of Jesus in Damascus. Barnabas was a hero maker in the life of Saul, who we now know as the Apostle Paul. While Barnabas wrote 0 letters that we find in our modern day Bibles, Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote a total of 13. If it wasn't for Barnabas, we wouldn't have all this stuff from Paul. And in the scheme of influence, when it comes to the New Testament, you have Jesus, and I would argue then you have Paul. And it was Barnabas who said, hey, get on my back. Let me bring a seat to the table. Let me make room for you. He was the one who leveraged his power for Paul. Again, Barnabas played a crucial role by being a hero maker. Which leads us to our third and final point on our outline under ways we can encourage others. Use Jesus as the model. Well, encouragement comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes and forms and variations. So many good ways to use encouragement. If you are a Christian, if you consider yourself a Christ follower, I think it's important for us to look at what were the things Jesus intentionally encouraged. In Luke 4, we run across an important part of the Jesus story. And this is one of those things one of those parts of the Bible that some people would say, this is where Jesus declared his agenda. So in Luke 4, we hear Jesus say this, "The Spirit of the Lord, the Eternal One, is on me." Why? Because the Eternal designated me to be his representative to the poor, to preach good news to them. He sent me to tell those who are held captive that they can now be set free, to tell the blind that they can now see. He sent me to liberate those held down by oppression. By using words like poor and captive and blind and oppressed, Jesus is saying he cares about the people in the margin. He cares about the people who've been forced to the sideline. He cares about the vulnerable, that he cares about the broken. In Luke 5, we hear that Jesus ended up saying some version of, I came for the sick, not for the well. And it's verses like Luke 4 and this Luke 5 that I reference, and just the life of Jesus that help us to see that Jesus was a God who desired to bring redemption. He was a God who loved to build up and to restore what was broken and what was hurting. I'm going to have us watch this video right now by Father Greg Boyle. Father Greg Boyle is a hero maker, and you see that in the way that he runs his church, and you see that in the way he runs his organization up in LA. It's called Homeboy Industries. Homeboy Industries is the largest gang rehabilitation center in the country. It's all about empowering, equipping, bringing dignity, support, training, and resources to people who have been previously incarcerated or people who have been previously in gangs. This man is a hero maker. And I want you to watch this video and to notice, yes, Father Greg Boyle he is a real life hero maker. I'm so thankful our generation has him. But make sure you pay attention and find the second hero maker in this clip. Watch this.
My alma mater, Gonzaga University, called me and said they were gonna have a big talk on a Tuesday night with 1,000 people. And so I said, sure, and they said, can you bring 2 homies with you? And I always pick homies who have never flown before, just for the thrill of seeing gang members panicked in the sky. I've never picked anybody more terrified of flying than this guy, Mario. He was just absolutely petrified. In fact, he was hyperventilating. And we hadn't even boarded the plane yet. And then our flight crew arrives, and I see 2 flight attendants, females, and they both have very large cups of Starbucks coffee, and they're schlepping up the front steps. And Mario goes, when are we gonna board the plane? I said, as soon as they sober up the pilots. I should tell you that Mario, in our 30-year history at Homeboy, is the most tattooed individual who's ever worked there. His arms are all sleeved out, neck blackened with the name of his gang, head shaved, covered in tattoos, forehead, cheeks, chin, eyelids that say the end, so that when he's lying in his coffin, there's no doubt. And so I'd never been in public with him, and we're walking and people are like this, and mothers are clutching their kids more closely. I'm thinking, wow, isn't that interesting? Because if you were to go to Homeboy on Monday and ask anybody there who's the kindest, most gentle soul who works there, they won't say me, they'll say Mario. He sells baked goods at the counter at our cafe. He's proof that only the soul that ventilates the world with tenderness has any chance of changing the world. So the nighttime talk comes, and it's 1,000 people, and I invite them up to share their stories in front of all these people for 5 minutes each. They were terrified, but they did a good job. And honest to God, if their stories had been flames, you'd have to keep your distance, otherwise you'd get scorched. I invite them up for Q&A, and I said, yes, ma'am, and a woman stands and she says, yeah, I got a question, it's for Mario. First question out the gate. And Mario steps up to the microphone. He's a tall drink of water, skinny, and clutching the microphone, and he's terrified. Yes. And she says, well, you say you're a father and you have a son and a daughter who are about to enter their teenage years. What advice do you give them? What wisdom do you impart to them? And Mario clutches his microphone, and he's just terrified, and he's trembling, and he's getting a hernia trying to come up with whatever the hell he's gonna say when finally he blurts out, and he stops. And he retreats back to his microphone clutching, terrified retreat. But he wants to get this whole sentence out. I just don't want my kids to turn out to be like me. And there's silence until the woman who asked the question stands, and now it's her turn to cry, and she says, why wouldn't you want your kids to turn out to be like you? You are loving, you are kind, you are gentle, you are wise. I hope your kids turn out to be like you. And 1,000 total perfect strangers stand, and they will not stop clapping. And all Mario can do is hold his face in his hand, so overwhelmed with emotion that this room full of people, strangers, had returned him to himself, and they were returned to themselves. And I think you go from here to stand with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop. And you stand with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. And you stand with those whose dignity has been denied and you stand with those whose burdens are more than they can bear, and you stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless. Make those voices heard.
We get to do what that woman did to that man, for Mario. As a Christ follower, we are invited to participate in the mission of God, which is the mission of bringing freedom and wholeness and transformation and love to people who are hurting all around us. This should be something that is in our life constantly, to mirror Jesus back to people, like that woman mirrored Jesus back to Mario. This is our bottom line. A hero maker is an encourager. God has given us one another to bring restoration into the world. He has given us each other, and we are all in this together. Jesus talks about this oneness. The Apostle Paul talks about this oneness. Mother Teresa, when asked what's wrong with the world, here's her quote: "We've forgotten that we belong to each other." Seeing the world through this lens of togetherness, this huge lens of togetherness, is key. It's easier to encourage people when you realize, A, that's my job, that's my privilege, but B, you're my people. And when it comes to this topic of togetherness, what the Bible tells us is that this is also about our togetherness with God. That we are called to be connected to the ultimate encourager. The Bible doesn't simply teach us to be encouragers. The Bible says, get close to the ultimate encourager. Be built up in love and grace by him. And then from there, we go out and love the world from this place of overflow. Here's one verse on the topic. So then, just as you receive Christ Jesus as Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. It's through this connection, this union with God, where we receive his love and grace, and we can't help but have that overflow and pour around us. If you consider yourself a Christ follower, this is what you've been freed and called to do, to love and to serve, to allow God to fill you up, to be built up, and then to get to this place where you look outside yourself and you look into the world that is hurting and broken, and you say, how can I leverage my power, my resources, my words, my actions, my posture to help other people rise and find the healing and the wholeness that they need? In a second, we are going to get the opportunity to engage and to worship in a song, a moment of reflection. And my encouragement to you is to honestly consider, how am I using my power? How am I using my power for the sake of leveraging and building other people up? When it comes to my words, am I giving them away? Are there people in my life that I could speak life into? Are there people that I've held away and I've kept at arm's distance, but I actually need to draw near? Do I need to change the way I see people who are hurting, people who are broken? You may be here and in step one and saying, God, build me up, encourage me, and that's fine too, because that's a part of the process. But I believe, like that woman, we are each invited and called to step out of our own lives and to see, how can I use what I have to build up? I think of all the group leaders in this place who have deliberately chosen to lead groups to help other people find friendship. I think of all the volunteers who serve in our Hand Over Hand program, which is a program specifically designed to show love and value and worth and dignity to kids and their families of kids who have special needs. I think of all the volunteers who serve in our prison ministry. I think of my friend Marissa, who's given her life to help people who have been affected by trafficking. I think of my friend Joelle, who's all about helping veterans who have suffered from PTSD, bringing value and dignity and love through music into their lives. This is gonna look different, but I don't think there's any of us who are unqualified to encourage and to build up. And of course, as we do this, we get to do this connected to the ultimate encourager. It is our love that will show the world who our God is. Will you go ahead and stand with me? I'm gonna pray, and then we're gonna go ahead and worship together. God, you desire to build us up and to send us out in a world that is in need of love and restoration. Help us to say yes to your love and your grace in our own lives, and then to turn around and be people who extend that same love and grace to other people. God, help us to see that we are in this together. Speak to us, lead us. Help us to see our individual next right step when it comes to being hero makers. Help us to show the world your love through our love. Amen.
And all the lost and lonely, and all the thieves will come confess, and know that you are holy, and know that you are holy, and we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. And all the hearts who are content, and all who feel unworthy, and all who hurt with nothing left, will know that you are holy, and we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah, and we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. Praise you. We sing this to you. Shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. We pour out. Shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Oh, shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses that He